Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another special edition of the Pelican Sports Report right here on 446 Sports. Wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, X, we appreciate you watching. KP Miles and Marshall Leffler are here with you to recap what we've seen so far in the LHSAA baseball postseason and also take a look at this quarterfinal round, this third week, for some teams the third round, for some teams their first playoff game, but basically week 3 here of the postseason has really kicked off today. And KP, it's been, as long as some of these teams have waited, and as long as some of the farmers around here waited for rain, all these teams finally get a chance to get back on the field. And we're already seeing Mother Nature kind of take its toll and push some schedules around, but really kind of just like with football and basketball and everything that we've covered so far, this academic year, quarterfinal round is really where you start to see, you look up and down those brackets and there's only good teams left.
There's only good teams left. Here's when when we figure out who's the best of the best.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. I know last time we started with Division I and started on the non-select side. Let's start on the select side of things, and we'll start in Division I select. And
okay.
Why not start with what we know best, and that's a lot of teams up and down this bracket. Speaking of best, one of the best overall teams in the state, Brother Martin, they're going to host, obviously with that 1 seed, they're going to host the Ash Trojans coming up this weekend. The 8-seeded Trojans took care of Captain Shreve in that 8-9 matchup last weekend, got some good starting outings from their staff and did what they needed to do on offense. But KP, just like we said, where round 3 kind of shows you where there's only good teams left. These 8-1 matchups where we know where a team like Ash is, look, things have been good so far, but now you're going up against great.
You are. And, doing the research and looking at this team, Brother Martin is obviously in that Catholic League in New Orleans. They've had a heck of a schedule. They've played a lot of great baseball. Coach Hunter texted me something today. He said, you don't win the games they won with just good players. I've looked at their lineup. They've got some young men that are going to be really hard to deal with. Brady McCluskey, Bronson Lamont, Brody Shannon, Tyler Durand. I mean, all these kids are hitting 350 plus. They've got 40 RBIs for Shannon, 40 RBIs for Lamont, 26 RBIs for Durand. They've got a couple of good arms. Drake Amidi, I think that's how you say his last name, 7-0, 1.89 ERA. And then Blaze Tinkstrom, 3-1 with a 2.9 ERA. So, I mean, they're going to be a tough out for us. But, they're going against a couple of young men that, just to give you a little background, Marshall, I talked to you about it last week. Captain Shreve came into this series last week with 3 kids hitting over 400. 3 kids hitting over 400, and those 3 young men did not get a hit for the series against Jack Lee and Clayton Doyle. They went 0 for the series. And so you got Jackson Ross, you got Bryson Phoenix, Trent Hennessy, Melvin Burns. I mean, this is going to be a good matchup between these two teams, and it's an offensive team in Brother Martin against a defensive pitching team in Ash.
Yeah, and it's been kind of one of those, obviously coming into the season, Jack gets a lot of attention and deservedly so, and for the most part, backed that up all year long. Had many strong starts in a lot of big situations, but Doyle right behind him, is kind of that other ace. They've been able to put him in a lot of those three game series and play the same style of baseball because Clayton's been able to kind of give him the same kind of game. The Jack is. They do it in different ways. Doesn't look the same, but the results are there and everything else is steady on defense.
It's been Doyle goes into the last inning last Saturday with a no-hitter. Kid hits the ball over the center fielder's head for a double, and then he finishes the game off. So, texting with Coach Hunter earlier, it's going to take that type of performance again from those 2 kids to have a chance against Brother Martin. But stranger things have happened. been, an 8-9 matchup with two dominant pitchers, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, and so far in this bracket, not too many strange things have happened, as we're still looking at 1 through 8 alive in the bracket. So while you get that 1-8 matchup, you kind of look on that side of the bracket, and you get a 5-4 with Rummel and St. Thomas More. Rummel, obviously, back talking about the Catholic League again, just like Brother Martin, and we saw some of those schools in person this season. You and I did, KP, but a tested team like Rummel that's seen all these deep staffs in the Catholic League going up against St. Thomas More, who same way. Your district is as good as anything that you'll see in the postseason. I think they played Turlings 4 times, 3 times. They're in district, and even earlier in the season they matched up with OC late, Opelousas Catholic late in the season as well. So it's really cliche when you look at a lot of these, when it's 1 through 8 in this bracket, but this is that 4 or 5 matchup of 2 teams that earn those seeds through scheduling and are eager to play a team like one another.
Yeah, 17-4 for Archbishop Rummel in that Catholic League. This Division I bracket is loaded. I think that looking at this bracket, it wouldn't surprise me if, Catholic of Baton Rouge and Holy Cross went 3 games. It wouldn't surprise me if John Curtis and Jesuit went 3 games. Surely wouldn't surprise me if Archbishop Rummel and St. Thomas More went 3, and, Brother Martin and Ash can go 3 as well. Any of those teams can win this bracket. It's a wide open situation.
Yeah, and really, yeah, when you look at those individual matchups, all of these teams, somewhere on that roster, and a lot of times on that starting staff, have names that are either offered by colleges, signed with colleges, or getting interest, and definitely have the stuff on the mound that you see. And like I said, we saw with Mays Martin and and that entire staff for Jesuit. They're going to be able, if these staffs stay healthy, they're going to be able to match up with John Curtis, who they have in a 3-6 matchup. That's an all Catholic League affair, but 2 teams that we've been looking at since the beginning of the season and have just continued to impress, staying in that top 10 all year long.
You can see how these teams are ranked high, even though they beat up on each other down there in Baton Rouge. In New Orleans, and they're still ranked high because, they can play each other, and the losing team still get some good PowerPoint rankings.
Yeah, and same could be said again. It's the same approach with the 2 seed Catholic, who I think had maybe 5 losses, and I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. It was to just juggernaut type teams that are just as talented, and have 1 and 2 seeds in the postseason. But looking at Catholic, that's one of the most impressive 2 seeds that you'll see in a playoff bracket as they get set to take on Holy Cross, another Catholic League team.
Absolutely. they're 31-5. They came here and they're just 7-1 in district. Again, this is just a loaded bracket, and it's probably with these last 8 teams involved, probably as good as a bracket as there is.
And so you've been involved with the Trojans all year long, who are still in there with that 8 seed. So you've by design, by necessity, you've had to really pay attention to the cream of the crop in this bracket, and heading into the quarterfinals, that's who's left. The teams that earn those top 8 seeds are still there, looking for a chance to go to the semis. So what, through the regular season or through the first couple weeks, or looking at this week in D1 Select, team-wise, player-wise, or just bracket-wise, has stood out to you the most as you paid attention to these teams since the winter?
Just, again, Catholic, with the schedule they have, looking at their schedule here, and they're on a winning streak. They've lost very few ball games this year. Looking at this schedule, their last loss was to University Lab. Then they have gone on a really long winning streak here, and it's just seeing them come here. they don't make mistakes. And all these teams in this bracket, the ones that win, it's not the great plays, it's not the diving catches, it's the mistakes. And these teams don't make mistakes. Talking to a friend of mine down in Baton Rouge about another bracket we're going to talk about, he said, man, both these teams just don't make mistakes. And that's what we've got to limit. We've got to score some runs against Brother Martin, but we've got to limit the mistakes and clean some things up. And I think Coach Briggs has been working on that this week, and they're going to head out in the morning and see if they can't get a W tomorrow evening on game 1.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think you and I noticed that with Jesuit, is just how impressive they were, not necessarily with talent or anything that was just going to jump out at you, but just playing clean baseball and not making the easy things difficult. And yeah, I think you've seen that throughout the Catholic League. You've seen that throughout 3-5A and the 2-5A teams that are in the select bracket as well. So before we move on to another bracket, any final thoughts on these juggernauts that'll kick it off this weekend?
No, I do know that Brother Martin is going to be streaming these games this weekend. I'm going to get the links and put them on our page so that whoever can't make it down there can watch. I know there's a big contingent going down there, but the weather's going to play a factor. I saw the softball, playoffs got moved on Friday. It's going to play a factor. But it's just going to be the team that makes the fewest mistakes is going to move on, and we're going to have to see who that is.
Yeah, and right, yeah, I think it could come down to that because you're going to see strength on strength as far as starting pitchers that are rested and ready to go, and we've seen so many of them live up to the hype throughout the regular season. Let's peek KP at Division II, and we'll stay on the select side. One team that we did get to see a little bit in Sinlaw last week was St. Michael the Archangel, the 9 seed. They came into Buckeye, and that was a really great series that came down to just the last half inning there in game 3. And Buckeye gets upset. St. Michael's the 9 seed, moves on. So they take on the 1 seed Vanderbilt Catholic, who, again, like one of those teams that we said, has been 1 seed caliber the whole year as far as expectations and strength of schedule. And that's kind of where they've performed as you've watched them. We haven't seen them in person, but we have seen what they've done in the regular season.
Absolutely. Those 3 games with Buckeye, St. Michael, 2 of them are extra inning games. I mean, those kids at Buckeye, that's what they do. They bust their butt. They work hard. They overachieve a lot. And I know that first year coach out there, Coach DeWeese, that was a heck of a 3-game series. Could have went either way. Easily went either way. And now St. Michael's got an uphill battle against Vanderbilt Catholic, but then down here at the bottom of this bracket with Turlings Catholic and Laranger. I mean, it's going to be this is where you figure out who's the best of the best. And again, I think it boils down to we talk about the spectacular, but if you make the routine plays, St. Charles is going to make the routine plays against E.D. White. You got to make the ones that hit your glove, and if you do that, you got a chance to move on.
Yeah, going back to that Buckeye team real quick. They do have some seniors that are real key to what they were this year that are moving on, but they return a lot. It's just a small handful. So Coach DeWeese, who was a great player at Ash in his own right back in the day, I'm sure that they'll reset and be ready for next year. Yeah, and Vanderbilt, I mean, absolutely. they played Catholic High this year. They played Sam Houston. They played Catholic New Iberia. They were this bracket, when you look at it, isn't necessarily anything new for them. And again, that's consistent with a lot of different 1 seeds. A 4-5 matchup, Loyola and Acadiana Renaissance, ARCA down there in the Lafayette area. They've really held on to that 4 seed for most of the season with their tough schedule to start and the way they were able to perform. Loyola, they get some really good pitching performances from some of the guys that Roy Lang was talking to us about, and they're able to withstand a really tough Shaw team who is, a 12 seed, but going to be a tough playoff opponent. So we'll get a really good matchup there with the Flyers going down to Lafayette to take on ARCA.
Right. I know ARCA, a little bit about ARCA. I watched their basketball team up here against Menard. Coach Mouton may be joining us here in a little while to talk a little bit about ARCA and Turlings Catholic. He's from down in that area. His son was coaching in that upset that I sent you earlier. So, that he coaches baseball and basketball at Opelousas Catholic. So, yeah, I mean, these, according to Coach Mouton, Acadiana Renaissance is the quickest growing school in Lafayette.
Yeah.
It is growing by leaps and bounds as quick as anything, and it is going to they're going to have a good program. They came up and had a pretty decent basketball program, and so it's quickly growing down there, and looks like that's going to be a good 4-5 matchup there.
Yeah, those things tend to feed off each other. One sport gets rolling, and all the athletes start kind of focusing their efforts. So Loyola, who's typically played really good baseball, and Arca has kind of quickly grown into that 4A classification. Well, Loyola plays up there anyway, and they've been able to hang, and play up in baseball for many years. One team that you did mention is La Ranger, who is kind of in there in the woods between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and has quietly assembled a really talented roster. I know they're one of their aces, Mathern, has pitched some great games for them this year, and then they've taken on, they're in that 4A, I think District 7, that they've played really tough. Turlings, meanwhile, who has a extremely talented baseball roster. It's kind of one of those something's got to give matchups, which at these large school brackets, we've seen these good teams just do what you expect them to.
Well, La Ranger's 8-1 in district. They've had a good district. Turlings Catholic has a long history of being an excellent program, and so yeah, it's going to be when you go 8-1 in any district, it's that's not easy to do. So it's that should be a great matchup. I wish there was more opportunities for us to get out and stream some of these games. Hopefully, the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, the streaming stuff will catch on. I know it's caught on with a lot of others, but yeah, that should be a great matchup there when that 4 or 5 matchup.
Yeah, and then looking at St. Charles, who kind of it's the same. You look at them the same way you do at Catholic, and say, "Gosh, that's a 2 seed," and you realize how just how good of a regular season they've had. As they'll go to battle with Edie White, who, again, similar to Turlings, just consistently going to be in all sports, but baseball no exception, going to churn out talent. And like you mentioned, that area of the state plays really, really good baseball down there in South Central Louisiana.
26-9, 8-0 in district. This is where you prepare yourself to get to the to Sulphur, and it's St. Charles Catholic's gonna be hard to put away. They were 14-4 at home and 12-5 on the road. They're gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah. So looking at kind of comparing a little bit, like Division I and Division II select, we look at those top 8 seeds in Division I, and you say, well, gosh, all these teams have the pitching staff, they have the firepower and offense to maybe make something happen. When you look at Division II select, do you kind of get that same feeling, or do you feel that those 1 and 2 seeds are more than likely going to be who meets up in the finals?
You would think that in the smaller situations, those 1 and 2 seeds have earned those spots. So yeah, I think that there's a little bit, I don't want to say less parity, but I mean, I think, we don't bet on high school sports, but if I did, I'd probably say Edie White's going to play, Granville Catholic in the, in Sulphur. But again, stranger things have happened, especially in these 3-game series, because you don't know, we talk and joke about the Barb rule, you don't know what team has got that third pitcher. And some of these teams have not went to 3 games at all. They've just went to 1 game. Now, looks like in this bracket, Turlings Catholic's already taken a 1-0 lead, just got updated 3-2 in 7 innings over La Ranger. So Turlings Catholic up 1-0 in that series. They played today.
Yeah, that game started at 4, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting to see who's got that third pitcher, who's got a lot of teams have 1 and 2. Who's got that third pitcher, those bullpen arms that can come out. And, some of these smaller schools don't know how much depth they have, so we'll have to find out. But, yeah, it looks like, Turling's won a 3-2 game in 7 innings to lead off the series.
Yeah, I know that first pitch was scheduled for 4, and I'm sure it stayed that way with the forecast.
With the forecast, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah. So you mentioned who's got that third pitcher, and then also where's that weird 1-0 game or 2-1 game going to happen that literally can go either way, and we've already seen that kind of happen in the postseason so far. So we talk about these 3-game series and D1 and D2. We see typically that they've been built for it. Looking at Division III, or for a lot of schools, that 3-game series really comes into play, and the opponent, like a lot of good coaches say, is that little white ball. But while you're also taking on a tough playoff caliber opponent on the other side, you've got to beat them twice, and in some situations you've got to play 3 games, and you've got to find the depth at all positions to get that done. So one matchup where you think these teams are built for it is that 1-9 matchup with U High and Parkview. Parkview upsets Pope John Paul. They had a very good baseball team this year. So it's a 9-1 matchup, but it's a very familiar matchup, isn't it, KP?
It is. It's an inter-district matchup. Looking in that, spoke to a friend of mine down in Baton Rouge, Darius Guidry, longtime umpire, just recorded his 20th season in the LHSAA. And he talked to me about, this ULAB Parkview Baptist being a same district matchup. Just finished the season. They split the series. ULAB won a game. Parkview Baptist won a game. Parkview Baptist got a good catcher, Darius was telling me. And basically his thoughts were, the team that makes the fewest mistakes is going to win. He said they're both evenly matched teams, even though they're 1-9. He said he could see either one of those teams winning this series. It's good to get a perspective of somebody that's been on the field with both of them. And, he said this is going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, I would like to get back to U High in a minute. And just kind of a team that we haven't seen live, but similar to football, just hanging on to that 1 seed. They're playing D2 in football, but yeah, I mean, just not surprising, a collection of talent. That matchup below them on that side with Catholic New Iberia and Rose Pine, I actually have been able to see Rose Pine, and they're a public school in this select bracket. I think maybe not too many, just true private schools that are left in this bracket, other than U High and Rose Pine. But Rose Pine, when you look at their roster, I mean, pitching and hitting, they are loaded with talent. Guys that play in the summer with reputable programs. But Riker Blackman, a really good pitcher that I got to see throw against Tioga. He threw really well in a win. Pierce, their first baseman, a left-hander who can also throw. Barrett Cootie's a shortstop who's hit the ball far lately. Janice, their third baseman, I think he had a home run in the first round of the playoffs. So the Rose Pine Eagles over there in Vernon Parish may not know a bunch about them, may not get to see a lot of them, but they are going to have a lot of talent get off the bus, a lot of firepower in all phases of the game, and take on a Catholic New Iberia team who has a ton of respect statewide and has played, the best of the best in their class this year.
Yeah, they just finished a series with Holy Savior Menard. We're very familiar with them. I talked to one of the assistant coaches from Menard, and their game Friday night was, their last Friday night was 4-3. It was a good ball game, and then the next game was 10-4. He said that their pitching kind of ran out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great matchup. Catholic New Iberia and Rose Pine. The interesting team not to jump in this bracket obviously is Isadore Newman. I mean, to look at their record and see what they've done, and realize that they're 22-6 on a 16-game winning streak to end the season. I mean, I know they're the 2 seed. Obviously, the 1 seed University Lab is good, but I don't know if there's only one team that I've researched that's got more than a 16-game winning streak, and that's the 35 games Barb's won in a row.
Yeah, and you kind of look at those winning streaks, because see in March, like right around when the Trialtic tournament and the Red River Prep Classic that we cover, that tournament season right there in March is when you see just a lot of teams beat up on each other. And then it's been so impressive to see a lot of these teams that are left right after that point go on these long runs of just win after win after win. And that means, for one, they're taking care of their district competition, which is what you're supposed to do no matter what district that you're in. But it also means that they're kind of settling in to what kind of team they are. They found that third pitcher. They found that 7 or 8 hole hitter who can get 3 RBI in a game. So as these teams come into their own, you heard a lot of teams early on say that they were leaning on pitching and defense early, waiting for their sticks to come around. You'll get varying opinions on whether or not that has happened for certain teams, but those win streaks are interesting just to see. How teams figure it out and then how teams go against their caliber district once they get through those early season tournaments where everyone wants to see everyone else. Calvary
Absolutely.
and Dunham will match up in a 3-11. Calvary able to get through a lot of their district schedule, but did lose twice to Dunham in the regular season. So a familiar matchup. Calvary, they've churned a lot of talent. It's been a couple years since I've seen them in person, but I mean, they absolutely wowed me the years that I did get to watch them hit the ball. So eager to see if the Cavaliers can get back and steal one from the Tigers after getting swept in the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Calvary Baptist has got that on the radar, and that their coach will use that as bulletin board material. And that's a 3-11 matchup. But when the 11s beat you twice, then you got to show up and prove to them that you're the better team.
Yeah, and matching up against Newman, got to mention Notre Dame, the 10 seed, upsetting St. Louis Catholic, who is a really, really good team this year, in there at the 7 seed. And St. Louis played Bard, they played Turlings, Westlake, the best of the best in Southwest Louisiana. So a great job by the Pios from Crowley, Notre Dame, the 10 seed, getting that chance to take on the Greenies at Newman. So that'll be a good matchup. And, again, we know these schools, we know these programs, that they're used to winning no matter what the sport. And a lot of times it's the same young men making it happen as we see during the football season and the basketball season as well. So I always love D3 Select just because you've got some, 2A and 3A schools that really, really concentrate on building these good athletic programs. Having seen Rose Pine, I love their talent. But these will be a great weekend of games out of D3.
Absolutely.
So peeking at D4 Select, which definitely is front page news this evening. Yeah. And why don't we start there? The 1 seed goes down. OC, they lose to Central Catholic thanks to Jordan Taylor under the lights. He let me know that early on before I got to speak with UKP. But OC, a great team. They played Menard earlier this year, so we did get familiar with their program. And they're built, they're built to get that 1 seed in this bracket and win these 1-game series. But like they say, that's baseball.
It is, talking to or reading Mike Coppedge's, post, the Collins kid who's committed. He drove in a run against the LSU signee cross Gillian. I mean, a 16 beating a 1 is very rare. I haven't had a chance to talk to Coach Mouton yet. His son Eli coaches basketball and baseball there at Opelousas Catholic. So it's very rare, but it's the 1-game series, and when you can have that one pitcher that's dominant, you can do that. This is the example of why Barb changed the rules. I hate to say it, but that's it.
And you will see. Like Loranger tonight. That was what Mike Cobbage reported, that they didn't start Hayes Holton, who's a pitcher that I didn't mention, but is another super talented pitcher for the Wolves. So while you can kind of work that 3-game series out in D4, it's one and done. And Central Catholic, who again, if you ask them, they're not going to be that surprised by that because they play really tough teams down in that area of the state that you and I maybe don't travel to the most. But
Right.
they're going to play good teams out of Baton Rouge, home at Thibodaux, Morgan City, that whole area. They're going to play the best and the best. Central did have impressive regular season wins. They went up against Ed White and things like that. So by the time they face OC, they're not worried about that. In a 5-3 game, that's not surprising to them. That's something they expect to do, and good for them.
Absolutely. Yep.
So a couple other matchups. This is actually round 2 in these one-game series. St. Mary's, who we've got to talk with Coach Bree a little bit. They are down at Vermilion Catholic tonight in a 9-8 matchup. St. Mary's, we've known, as always, played really good baseball, and Vermilion Catholic, no exception. So we'll kind of see how the ball bounces in a lot of these games. OCS, the 5 seed, they'll take on St. John. OCS, by now you've seen some of the really talented names on their roster as they'll look to make a run back. I mean, they're a state championship baseball program. St. Martin's Episcopal, the 4 seed, they'll take on Ascension Episcopal, the Blue Gators. That's a schedule for Friday. We'll see how the weather sorts out everything. Cedar Creek was scheduled to play today, I believe, and we mentioned Cade Luker. He's a left-handed pitcher for them that I got to see as a freshman. I believe he's a junior this year, if I'm not mistaken. He may be a senior, but he's a left-hander that's thrown 90 and above this season. And if Cedar Creek, depending on how these next rounds go, if they can keep him healthy, and ready to go, that's going to be a huge advantage for the Cougars with that 3 seed in D4. And then a few other matchups in D4. The 11 seed Glenbrook is at Riverside, the 6 seed. St. Edmunds, who I've gotten to see this year, that they've got some talent on their roster. Paxton Myers, they've got actually a lot of left-handers in their batting lineup. And as a southpaw, it's fun to see. And then the 2 seed Covenant Christian will host Ascension Catholic. A lot of these teams, KP, you and I haven't seen in person this year, but these are athletic programs that we know, even in football and basketball. D4 is full of schools that are waking up and going to sleep thinking about how to win ball games. And so these are going to be high quality matchups, even though they are 1-game series with mostly 1A schools.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these scores in the morning.
Yeah, right. And to your point, yeah, a lot of those are being played tonight. So yeah, we'll be able to kind of cut this bracket half here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Anything from D4 select or anything on the select side before we cross over to non-select?
No, just want to, again, at 446, I think we do a real good job of this. Want to give our thoughts and prayers to Ascension Episcopal. I know I spoke with Coach Mouton, and he knew those 2 young men that were injured, and he knew the young lady who unfortunately lost her life in Baton Rouge. We want to extend our thoughts and prayers to that school and those families, and continue to lift them up and hopefully help them through this situation.
Yeah, that's always so interesting, KP. Is like that seems to be like what when you hear about our young people across the state, how we associate, where someone went to school, or where they what community they're a part of. That tells you so much about them.
It does.
Yeah, seeing it through the lens of sports, yeah, it does help you see those people and in those situations. It's tough to think about, but that's a situation where the school, not just the sports side of it, where the school can can lean on each other, because we've all been through it. We certainly know how quickly that sort of thing can happen.
Yep.
All right, so looking at the non-select side, and that one had a pretty eventful, regional round that brought us to the quarterfinals. Let's start talking about Division I non-select. Let's start with Barb. I think since the postseason has started, you and I have got to look into a little bit more, about who's making it go for this team. I've got a family member on a team that was able to play them twice this year and saw the talent up close and personal. And you see the college interest, you see the college names that are next to these young men's names, but we know about Buccaneer baseball. But my goodness, has 2026 been a super impressive year of this program?
Look, this team's good every year, but to win 35 games in a row, I mean, they lost their second game of the season to the Bennett School out of Houston, Texas, 2-1. That game was played on February 12th. They have not lost another game since then. And we're not talking about them playing, a bunch of Class B teams. We're talking about them playing Airline and Zachary and Dutchtown and CCA and Sam Houston and Sulphur and Karen Crow and all these teams, and they just have won 35 games in a row. It's impressive when you think about the expectations at Barb and what they've accomplished in the past, and everybody gets up. It's kind of like what LSU's dealing with this year. Everybody gets up to play LSU. You're the defending national champions. Barb gets everybody's best shot, and 35 times in a row they've taken it. And so, it looks like it's a collision course between Barb and Sam Houston. Sam Houston is just as good, looking at their record, 29-10, 10-4 in district. But when you put Sam Houston and Barb and Sulphur playing for a state championship, Marshall, you go the records out. They don't like each other. The fan base doesn't like each other. The coaches don't like each other. And this is just going to be looks like a collision course between these two teams that, but upsets happen. Look, we just saw the 14 seed, like we were fixing to say. Who'd have thought the 14 seed would have beat the 3 seed in West Monroe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you kind of see how that happens, but yeah, it still takes a lot. So yeah, we'll get to see Barb, and we'll get to see Jadarian Washington. He'll be at the All-Star game here at the end of May here in Sinlaw. He'll be the representative from Barb, so we'll get to see some of that talent on display here in Central Louisiana. Honville and Zachary, another 4-5 matchup in D1. Zachary's got some good wins. They beat U-High in the regular season. They finished up with Central, who you and I got to see early on. But Honville's down there in that district with Destrehan, and we've seen what Destrehan can do in the postseason. So this will be just a scrappy matchup from teams in the 2-2-5.
I mean, Destrehan went to West Monroe, the 3 seed, beat them 1-0. I think there was a kind of a controversial play to end that game, and then 5-3 on Saturday. Very rarely does a 14 seed beat a 3, but that just tells you how much talent there is in this district. And all these teams in this bracket, Barb has played these teams already during the season and beaten them. And so, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be down there in Sulphur, hopefully to watch our Trojans, but there's so much talent in this bracket, just like there is every year. And, it should be interesting to see how things play out this weekend.
Yeah, one matchup that I'm definitely looking forward to following is that Destrehan and Benton matchup. Did get to see Benton when they came to Sinlaw. They had Underwood, their pitcher, threw a really nice game, and I think their right fielder had a double and a home run. So they were in the top 10 for a large part of the year. They'll take on Destrehan, who. One of the talks of last weekend was that win over West Monroe, and it's just classic. That's how you get that done, is that 1-0 victory where you steal it. And yeah, we can talk about close plays, but that's how that's going to happen. And then they get it done with a 5-3 game, which is how we saw Central Catholic today. So.
Speaking of West Monroe, I know they're our district rival. There's no love lost between us and West Monroe. But Coach Wade Semino, retiring after 44 years of baseball, 12 of it at West Monroe. What a great baseball legacy he's leaving there at West Monroe. Congratulations on a great career, Coach. Class act. Met him last year and this year, just a class act. And, dedicated his whole life to baseball. I saw an interview with him. He said, "Man, I've had the greatest life. I've never had a real job." Said, "I've never had a real job." And so, you and I have real jobs and we do this on the side, but it must be great to be able to, do that for a living. And that's what he's done. So congratulations to Coach Semino, and looking forward to seeing who West Monroe puts in that spot next year. And this is just going to be there's just so much good baseball. Everybody talks about how good football is in Louisiana. And if you recruit Louisiana players, same thing doesn't apply. I'm really not sure the same thing doesn't apply to baseball. There's a lot of great baseball teams, baseball players in this state.
Yeah, and certainly a shout out to Coach Semino. I was an intern on that staff back when he was working at Louisiana Tech with Coach Roundtree and Coach Anderman back in the WAC days. And yeah, a hardworking man, a hardworking staff. And his son Thomas was a great player in high school and got to move on. Of course, Coach Wade was part of that ULL staff that was really successful to turn the century before he came to Tech. And a lot of wins in that resume, and a lot of good baseball players that have learned the game from him.
Right.
Looking at that 2-7 matchup, you talked about Sam Houston already. They'll match up with Walker, who Coach Briggs is matched up in that district there in the past. Another good 2-7 matchup, and it's easy to kind of lean towards favoring Sam Houston just because of what we've seen so far. In February, March, and April so far.
Sam Houston losing, they've done what they've had to do all year, and I know a couple of our guys from Alexandria went down and did that series last weekend, and it's just it's amazing how close those schools are. I'm sure they compete for baseball players. I'm sure that even though they're quote unquote non-select, that doesn't really stop some of that from going on. And so, you got to decide, are you going to be a Buck, or are you going to be Sam Houston? And it's going to be, it's worth it to drive to Sulphur to watch those two teams play each other if you're a baseball fan and have no dog in the hunt whatsoever. None.
Yeah. And a lot of times, the dog in the hunt could be the college that you root for, because there's a good chance that somebody on that team's getting recruited by by somebody. So we'll see kind of how if the 1 and 2 seeds end up meeting there. Some good, saw some little upsets, a little bit more less 1 through 8 in Division I non-select. But any overall thoughts about that bracket? We're familiar with it from district play. But any overall thoughts about that side, other than just the two super impressive teams in those top 2 spots?
I mean, it looks like it's theirs to lose. It looks like it's those 2 teams to lose, and I'm sure that they're going to be prepared, and hopefully we can. Like I said, I'm hoping to drive to Sulphur next weekend to watch the Trojans. But even if I don't, I'd be down there to watch maybe watch Barb and Sam Houston in a 3-game series.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's worth the price of admission to see no matter what. But we know you'll hop over the gate anyway, but we won't tell anybody about that for now. Let's look at Division II non-select. You and I have gotten to see a lot of the top teams, in person inside of this in this bracket, D2 non-select. Bruley and Iota will match up in the first round. Shout out Jimmy Hillman, the head football coach of the Bunkie Panthers. He's a Iota Bulldog grad. They are one of those teams, KP, that had a really, really hot finish to the season, winning, 13 of their last 15 games, something like that. I think it may have been 14 of 16 I don't remember exactly, but so they ride that momentum through the end of the regular season. And they take that to an upset win over Minden, a really nice baseball program who's has plenty of talent year in and year out. They knock them off. Their reward is the Bruley Panthers, who have a lot of power. They've got college commits in their infield. They've got a really good brother pitcher-catcher duo. and they are very deserving of that 1 seed.
Well, looking at that matchup, I mean, if Iota's won 14 out of the last 16, Brewley's won 16 straight. They've won 16 straight ball games. And actually, with these two in the playoffs, it's 18 straight ball games that they've won. So that could be a heck of a matchup to look at. I mean, Iota and Brewley, you know, 2 long winning streaks. Somebody hadn't lost in a while. Somebody's going to take one on Friday. Well, let's see. Yeah, first game's Fridays, then Saturday. So, you know, I mean, that should be a heck of a matchup. I wonder if we can see if that's streamed anywhere. That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Brewley, like I said, you look around every spot on that infield, and it's tough to see how you're getting the ball out of the infield, and then they match it with offense as well. All those players right there. So a deserving 1 seed, and like I said, they've got some people that'll be playing college baseball as well. One team that I've been dying to see that I've just heard people talk about, Pearl River, the 4 seed. They'll take on Lakeshore, the 5th seed, in an all St. Tammany matchup there. But Pearl River, you know, and again, they're down there playing those good teams like Hannon, and you know, you might match up with LaRange or a team like that, St. Thomas Aquinas, you know, the schools in that area that are going to challenge you. But you know, with what we know about D2 non-select, and a 4 or 5 matchup with those schools, that's going to be a gritty. If you can have an aggressive baseball game, I think that's where you'd see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both those teams are going to, you know, have really nothing to lose. They're going against the winner gets not only Brewley or Iota, but then, you know, down here at the bottom of this bracket, Lutcher and West Feliciana. I had a chance to, you know, message with Coach Jennings today from North DeSoto. I mean, North DeSoto's on a winning streak. They just had Delafield throw a no-hitter, you know, and, you know, Coach Jennings, I got some notes from him whenever we were talking about North DeSoto. So, yeah, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be interesting to see if Delafield, you know, according to what I've been told, is a great kid, wants to go out a winner. Mm-hmm. He lost the state championship game in football, and I think he's determined not to do that in baseball.
Yeah, and got the no-hitter against Iowa, who was the team to win that bracket and
beat him in football.
Yeah. Luke Delafield,
probably a little bit of motivation there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we got to see him when he came to Ellick. Great young man, and kind of hard not to root for him. They're the 2 seed. The 3 seed, Lutcher, has only lost 3 games since the month of March began. They'll take on West Feliciana, the Saints, who we saw on the football field earlier this fall against the Trojans. They knocked off Eunice, upset, a little 11-6 upset. So Lutcher and St. James, 2 teams in that parish that play good baseball. St. James actually got upset by Caldwell Parish in D3 non-select, but Lutcher, 3 losses since March began.
That's impressive. This is the best time to be on a roll, and you know, with all the confidence in the world, you know, we've got to this is where you got to play your best, and that's to only lose 3 since March is definitely an impressive run.
Yeah, another team who has not lost much lately is Rain, the 7 seed, another 7-2 matchup. They'll get the Griffins in North DeSoto, but other than Turlings and Catholic New Iberia and some tough matchups with St. Thomas More and Opelousas Catholic, that's really the only team that have been able to beat Rain since March began as well. So a tough 7 seed going up against a talented 2 seed in North DeSoto, but Rain's tested. They have played good quality baseball in the past 2 months.
They have. Talking to Coach Jennings today, you know, Rain is a quality team that he played in the playoffs 2 years ago. They have 2 great pitchers that play the game hard. They're gritty in the batter's box and have some guys with some power. You know, Coach Jennings was a little bit concerned about the weather forecast, but, you know, he said we're confident in our abilities as a team, but know we have to play our best. You know, he's not taking Rain lightly, knowing that even though they're a 7 seed, you know, he's got to play his best. And, you know, it's a 3-game series starting tomorrow, and then Friday, or it looks like they're playing 2 Friday, 1 tomorrow and 2 Friday. So, you know, I think they did that for the weather in case they have to push it back Saturday. I did find out something I wasn't aware of. You can play Sunday if you have to.
Yes.
You can play Sunday if you have to.
And that has been scheduled. There have been teams that have already put games on Sunday today. They have announced it today. So
there's some weather all around the state coming in Friday, and it's going to affect softball, baseball. Coach Jennings is looking forward to a big matchup. Understands he's got a tough series, and that's I don't think he'd want it any other way. Thanks to him for reaching out to me, give me some information.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the what we got to see, what we've seen so far in the postseason of these seeds don't matter as much as we think they do. Once these games start, it's a pitcher trying to get it to the catcher with a hitter in the way. We look so much into these seeds because I think we want to, we admire what these teams did to get those seeds. If you earned a top seed, you obviously played a tough schedule and won big matchups. So we we like to see the teams that get that done. But a 2-7 matchup, that's a toss-up, right?
Yeah, especially again in a 3-game series where you don't a lot of these teams, they have one good pitcher and they may have two. It's that third guy. How good is the third guy? He's probably pitched on Tuesday night every night, so he's not faced the better teams. How good is that third guy? And I think that there's some certain teams out there, Ash being one of them, that's got a couple of kids that if they had to go to Game 3 would be beneficial. It's these 3-game series change everything. I remember a couple years ago, a 31 seed came here and beat Tioga, 1-0, and it was because they had a great pitcher. So it's these 3-game series change the dynamics of everything.
Yeah. And again, when a lot of people have 2, but which teams have 3 when it comes to starting pitching, or do you have a third just that day, which we see that has happened a few times. Any more thoughts, KP, on D2 non-select?
No, I think we've covered it all.
I can't wait to see some of these matchups when you see just those D2, D3 non-select communities, schools that love it. And we'll get into a few more of them right here coming up as we move to Division 3 non-select. We'll start with the 1 versus the 9. I mentioned St. James, the 8th seed. They got upset by the Caldwell Parish Spartans, and that was a walk-off win in Game 2 by Caldwell, one of my favorite names this year, Gump Dunn, number 7 for Caldwell. He gets that done, a good pitcher, and he gets a walk-off double to upset Caldwell, to upset St. James. So Spartans move on. Their reward is a trip up to Ouachita Parish, which isn't a far drive from them, but they will be taking on the defending champ, Sterlington Panthers.
So Bump Dunn got
Gump
the double.
Gump Dunn.
Gump. Okay, yeah. Gump. I was going to say Bump Dunn. That's the greatest baseball name I've heard in my life. I mean,
Gump Dunn.
So Gump Dunn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Caldwell Parish, great program up there. Actually, my last ball game I ever umpired as a LHSAA official, I did on Caldwell's field. Great program up there. Nice place to go up there. And it's going to be interesting to see. Sterlington is loaded. They always are. They're well coached, and it's probably their bracket to lose. Looking at the bracket and looking at seeing who's in it. Westlake's pretty good, obviously. Doyle's pretty good as well, but Sterlington's the cream of the crop here when it comes to what they've done. And I got a friend of mine whose kids played up there for a while, and it's going to be hard to beat Sterlington.
Yeah, and they're the 1 seed, and they're, like you mentioned, you look at that 2 and 3, and team wise, you might say just as good. What does stand out about Sterlington is they kind of have one of those Barb type rosters when you just think of names that you remember, that you've heard for the last 2 or 3 years. People being recruited. Miller Sheets, we know, Ben Sheets' son, a great pitcher for them. Devin Downs, who threw a perfect game in the playoffs against Vidalia. He's throwing it in the 90s this year, one of the hardest throwers in the state. but Belonger and the other just talented names of just, high profile talented guys that Sterlington has. Are they the front runner by seeding? Sure, we'll say that. By expectations that they defend their state title, I'll give that to them as well. So yeah, while this bracket is wide open because anything can happen, they've earned it. They've earned this one seed, and they'll get to defend that against a Caldwell Parish team who has talent, like you said. It typically does baseball very well. That Caldwell's ready for this matchup, so they'll go up there and and give it everything they've got. Another 4-5 matchup, which we've seen several of so far, or we're seeing a lot of this weekend. ERAF will go to South Beauregard. These two teams met up in the semifinals of this bracket last year. South Beauregard needed 3 games to get past Port Barry. Port Barry had an 8-inning gem to win game 1. South Beau came back and won. ERAF, who was the runner-up in this bracket last year to Sterlington, they were able to sweep Pine with a lot of power hitting and some really good pitching. So this team has Jed Henry, who pitches for South Beau. He'll be at that All-Star game at LCU. But South Beau has 2 starters and probably a third that they can confidently take into the series. ERAF the same way. Between Duron, Champagne, and the other talented guys that they have, they can throw 3 or 4 guys with the utmost of confidence. This will be a fantastic matchup this weekend.
Absolutely. South Beau, been over there a couple times to do a couple 3-game series over there, and great facilities. They're always in the mix. They just always are. They've always got talent. It's a great program over there, and it should be a good matchup. I don't know a whole lot about them this year. I haven't had a chance to see them, but we have seen Kinder over at Menard. They're a pretty good matchup as well. And so, it's there's just a lot of good baseball in all these brackets, Marshall.
Yes, and having been able to see several of these teams this season in person, these are equal matchups, and that's the way they want it, because it's just you're not going to get a lot of 6'6", 250-pound just monsters out there. You're going to get high school students that are coming out there and trying to get singles and doubles and throw strikes at whatever velocity they have. So it's great baseball, and it'll be a good matchup. You mentioned Kinder. They've played some really good baseball, and they've got kind of some underrated talent on their roster. Grant Wiedner, who hit a walk-off for them in the previous round, and we also saw them come up and play Menard. I think they won that game by a few runs in district. So Kinder, a talented team with a first-year head coach. They'll take on Doyle, who has a very impressive schedule and kind of, racked up a few losses towards the end of the year, although that was against Jules Sumner, really good team, Newman, which we talked about, Pine and Walker, 2 playoff teams that were single-digit seeds in their own right. So Doyle, don't look too much into the losses that kind of were backloaded toward the end of the season. They had almost a 20-game winning streak in the regular season, and Doyle, one of those 3A teams that doesn't play football. They go all in for those sports, those winter and spring sports, and they're a darn good baseball team this spring.
Yeah, I mean, a couple losses at the end of the year, when you had a big winning streak, just get you prepared for the playoffs. That's all it does, and they should. I think they'll come out and this is, again, even though it's the smaller school bracket, it's still 3-game series. You got to figure out who that third guy is.
Right. Yeah, and some teams have it. Some teams think they have it, and some teams are. Maybe seeing what they're going to find out.
Well, speaking of talent, real quick, Marshall, I wanted to say something. I'd be amiss if I didn't bring up a young man that we saw last weekend, Andrew Sharp. And I forgot to say something about Andrew earlier, but this young man came in, pitched Saturday, only pitched 3 innings. Coach Todd Sharp's son, threw 30 pitches in 3 innings, struck out 7 of his 9 batters, threw 30 pitches in 3 innings. He's going to LSUE. Tremendous talent, having some arm issues. His dad didn't want to put him in a spot. Hated to see the kid come out of the game. If the kid doesn't come out of the game, that's a 3-game series with Ash. He's that good. Again, talked to him after the game. What a fantastic young man. Thanks to him and his dad for coming up here and putting on a show. This young man was impressive. And going to go to LSUE, where there's a storied program. I don't know if people realize that LSUE's program down in Eunice is one of the best JUCOs in the country. So congratulations to him. Thanks to his dad for all the great information he gave us to help our broadcast sound as good as it could do last weekend.
Yeah, and that was someone a player that Roy Lang had covered earlier this year. So yeah,
absolutely.
and of course, just 30 pitches in 3 innings. I definitely had a few outings where that was not the case at all. So yeah, good 8-9 match.
It was impressive.
Yeah. The 2-7 in this bracket, Westlake and French Settlement. We mentioned Westlake. They took on St. Louis Catholic of Baton Rouge, South Bow, Northwood of Shreveport. They took on tough teams in the latter part of their season. French Settlement, they're down there with Doyle, so they match up with teams like that, and they got past a really good Manny team that has a few college commits on their roster and some very talented pitchers. That's a 3-game series that French gets through. So a 2-7 matchup. We got plenty of those coming up this weekend. Westlake, maybe doesn't seem as just on paper as like some of these other 2 seeds, but they're they have definitely had that strength of schedule to where hosting French Settlement's going to be something that they're going to feel confident about at home.
Absolutely. In fact, I just texted Roy trying to get an update. He was going to join us tonight, but Calvary had a game. Trying to get an update on the Calvary score and see if we can find out. He's texting me back right now. So let's see if we can get an update on the Calvary score.
That's D3 Select. Yeah. Any final thoughts about D3 non-select? Like I said, this is one of those good competitive brackets we always like.
No, I think it's like we said, I think it's going to be great up and down. 3-1 right now. Dunham over Calvary in the bottom of the 5th inning. 3-1 Dunham over Calvary.
So they meet up for the 3rd time this year, and we'll see who moves on in D3 Select. Let's move on UNIKP to D4 Select before we wrap things up with Class B and C. The 1 seed Welsh. I did get to see them play earlier this year against Kinder. They took a loss on the road, but since that game, they've followed that up, and I think they only lost 3 regular season games after that. So the past 3 months, really, Welsh has been on a roll, very deserving of that 1 seed. They'll take on Franklin. LaSalle will go to Haynesville. This will be a great matchup. LaSalle has kind of got a tough schedule as the season went on, but figured out a lot of their team. They've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores that are making it happen for them right now. Got to go and cover their first round game that they had at home. So they'll go on the road now, and we'll see if they get to go back home. But they'll take on the winner of Welsh and Franklin. That'll be a good matchup. Vinton, Gage Guidry, one of those really good pitchers around the state that's got a lot of attention. I think he might be on that all-star team. I'm not sure. They're a 5 seed. They'll take on Logansport. 4 seed Centerville will take on Maryville, the 20th seed. Mangum, a 3 seed. That game is going to be tomorrow. They've got a really talented roster with some good teams. They'll take on Montgomery from here in Sinlaw. Mason Jordan, who's got almost 100 strikeouts this season as a pitcher for the Tigers. They'll go on the road. That'll be an all-purple matchup, Tigers and Dragons.
Like the bracket is updated, Marshall. Welsh 10-0 over Franklin.
Okay, so Welsh
has moved on 10-0 over Franklin in 5 innings. It looks like, and then Oakdale has also
they won 3-0. Yeah, Oakdale won 3-0 this evening over Lake Arthur. I was going to go cover that game, but with the weather coming in, just didn't want to get caught out far away from home. So. And then the 7-10 matchup was Grand Lake and Oak Grove. Oak Grove, who's been a baseball juggernaut in the 2A level for the past few years. So these are 1-game series. These will be great. A lot of these starting pitchers are going to be, rested and ready for these rounds. So you'll see aces, tonight, tomorrow, and throughout the weekend in D4. And it'll be interesting to see if, Oakdale having a really good season at the 2 seed. It'll be interesting to see if 1-2 end up there, or if anything can happen in these single game series.
Absolutely, they can, especially with these smaller schools, single games. So, I know you kind of lead this show, but I'm going to lead this Class B bracket off because I'm going to ask you about your alma mater and where you played high school baseball, and what do you think about this Class B bracket with the Grace Christian and Lacassine? Have you seen Lacassine this year?
I have not seen Lacassine. I have seen Grace Christian a few times. I've seen pretty much everyone on their starting staff that they would run out.
And that lefty's tough.
That lefty is tough. Logan Markle, he's a sophomore. He turned 16 the day I turned 40. So whether or not I'm the best left-handed pitcher to ever put on that hat, my legacy may be in jeopardy if it wasn't already.
In 2 more years, he definitely probably going to get you. Right now, I would still go with you, but in 2 more, he's got 2 more seasons, and your records may be in jeopardy. But Grace is always a good program, well coached, and they play a lot of baseball, and they're going to the number 1 seed Pitkin. I saw Coach Holt today talking about his team. This is a loaded bracket. Oak Hill, Converse, Family Community. I mean, this is just a loaded bracket.
It is a loaded bracket, and it's going to be interesting to see how these 1-game situations work themselves out. For Grace, the 3 seed, I mean, I do think that if number 27 is on the mound for them, that they're going to have a great shot in any game. He's just going to be tough to deal with. Tall left-hander, throws in the mid-80s, and is just very consistent, very mature. Is plays beyond what you'd expect of him as far as a maturity standpoint. And he's been very consistent. McDaniel, their other starter that they've leaned on a lot, he's good too. Doesn't look the same. It's different pitch selection there that he uses, but he can get it done as well. But with Markle, I think that it's just a really tough matchup. He can get, I'm sure, but there's a lot of times this year where he's been super dominant. The 1 seed.
How cool would it be to see a Grace Christian Glenmore semifinal matchup in Sulphur? Again, 2 schools that are in the same district. They that we can just say it, they don't like each other, and it's a heck of a matchup. It'll be a great. I mean, and that's that's the 2 seed and the 3 seed. Getting to that point be worth the trip to Sulphur to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see standout talent on a lot of these routes. You talk about Pitkin; they've got an all-star outfielder that they're sending to LCU next month. And he can pitch really well. Lincoln Stevens is another pitcher for them that dealt with injury, but now he's back healthy. So with Gage and Lincoln and Gavin Holt, Coach Holt's son, all available to pitch. Pitkin's 3 deep. Grace, like we mentioned, they're 2 and 3 deep on their pitching staff. Glenmore is absolutely 3 deep between Gillespie, Holloway, Robbins, and other pitchers that they have if they need to run out there. So those top 3 seeds, very talented, 1 through 9 on offense, 1 through 9 on defense, and absolutely 2 and 3 deep on their starting staff. So the top 3 seeds, they won't all get to make it to the finals, but it'll be interesting to see. And then you talk about Weston. Coach Holt was talking to us about Weston yesterday. They Pitkin actually played them and lost to them. Pitkin was their basketball team was in the semifinals, and I think they had 8 players or something like that. So while Pitkin's a 1 seed, they've already lost to teams that have lower seeds in this bracket. So Pitkin's they're not even considering themselves as a 1 seed. They're considering themselves as the team that's playing Shudner tomorrow night. So that'll be a great matchup for them as they try to defend this championship. So, and then Holden at the 5 seed. You look at Hicks at the 8 seed. We saw them play. They have 2 guys that throw in the 80s. They're 2 and 3, maybe 4 deep in their starting pitching staff. They have all district, all state type talent around the diamond. So, I mean, gosh, it's hard to picture that Hicks is an 8 seed. just so happens that a lot of these fields are ones I can get to, but man, Class B is some great baseball coming up.
No, I agree totally. And it's Hicks came here to Ash to play for a reason. They wanted to get better, and they did. It's going to be a in fact, I didn't realize you and I haven't even talked. We found out today we're going to be broadcasting the All-Star game. We got a text today from the czar of the
executive producer
brand, executive producer, and you and I are going to be broadcasting those games coming up. They're going to be a lot of great players from Barb, Notre Dame, Acadiana, Tyler Martinez coming up. You name it, they're coming up here. It's going to be fun to watch. Gage James from Pitkin, so it's going to be a great time. We're going to have to do a lot of research to find out about all these players. But yeah, this Class B bracket is impressive, and it's going to be with one game series. You just never know.
Yeah, and looking at this Class C bracket as well. The 1 seed Maurepas, who I'm determined to do what I can to find out as much as I can. I know exactly where that school is. Haven't got to see them or really learn much about them, but they do have that 1 seed. Ebarb is the defending champ. They're the 5 seed. They get a bye, so they'll take on Hornbeck, and that's a school that they're familiar with and that they play regularly. Plainview, they're going to send. They've got an all-star that'll be there. Caleb Calhoun, great basketball player. He had a really good season on the mound for the Hornets. They're still in there. So, again, these one-game series, and with Class C, as to where Class B has a lot of players that do get a little bit more individual notoriety, and maybe that's because recruitment or just different stats they hang up. Class C kind of prefers to get it done with with a team approach and not necessarily – may not have a ton of guys that are going to be recruited or going to be get a bunch of hype, but we saw how good Ebarb was last year. They absolutely earned that title. So if you got to love these small school matchups. I mean, it's these Class C games as far as passion and importance and the way these teams want to get it done in a playoff environment. The bleachers aren't as big, but those games are just as good as the 5A games.
A couple of years ago, I went over to Singer for Class C and watched a young man pitch that was ended up being a pitcher for UL. So, yeah, I mean, this young man was impressive. Got behind the plate, throwing it about 95 miles an hour, and he dominated that ball game. So, yeah, just because it's a Class C school doesn't mean they don't have somebody that can play at the next level, and so
well coached.
That's right, well coached. And, these matchups should be interesting for us to see how it turns out.
Yeah, that's one thing you notice when you go down to the small school level is the experience and the really high caliber level of coaching at a lot of these schools where those guys, maybe it's a coach who's made his hay at the 4A level and he wants to come to a school like this and teach the game the right way. You see it all the time. And that's
right.
It bears itself out for some fun playoff matchups. KP, any thoughts about some of these small school matchups as we move into the quarterfinal or to the regional round for them?
No, not really. I mean, I see a lot of these teams. Dotson is in the 14 seed against Claiborne Christian. Calvin,
Christian, a perennial. I mean, a Class C powerhouse if there is one.
Yep, Calvin. Both those two teams from Wynn Parish, where I grew up. They beat Singer, the 18 seed. So a lot of with when you got that one guy, in a 1-game series, you just don't ever know. These can be just as much of a toss-up as a 3-game series can be.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye on them, and as the bracket kind of shrinks, we'll hopefully be able to get more familiar with the teams in Class C that have made it this far. So it's 8:15. KP, Doug gave us an hour. Of course, you and me, we're gonna run our mouth a little bit.
Yeah, we're always gonna break the rules. We're always gonna break the rules. That's right.
Any closing thoughts about the playoff games that have been played so far or the weekend coming up? We've got to kind of watch the weather, but when the sun does come out and we can get the infield raked, there will be some really, really good games coming up.
A lot of great baseball. If you're a baseball fan in this state, you can find a good game close to where you're at. Go check it out. Support these young men, and we'll see how it all plays out on Sunday.
Yep. Yeah. Keep an eye on the weather for sure. I mean, follow these teams where you can to find out some schedule changes. Like I said, there've already been some games that have been decided will be played on Sunday in some Game 3 scenarios. So, stay tuned to your favorite team or stay tuned to 446 Sports, and we can try to do our best to cover some of these schedule changes that coming up as we try to dodge this rain. But some great games coming up. KP, you and I can hopefully recap some of these as we move through the postseason. And as we go out there and see what we see on the diamond, come back here and talk about what we've learned and what we're excited to see.
Absolutely, Marshall.
Thank you so much, KP. Thanks for everybody for watching this evening, watching live. You can catch this on demand afterwards. Thanks to Doug Gann, who helps with everything behind the scenes, and thanks to everyone. If you're watching and you have not liked or subscribed, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We do stuff all the time: live sports, recaps, analysis, not just baseball, but everything. We are your home this season for softball and baseball as we move towards Sulphur. For KP Miles, I am Marshall Leffler. Thank you so much for being a part of this special edition of the Pelican Sports Report right here on 446 Sports.